So, this is an article from 2021. It's by Michael West Media, who is a good source, independent journalist. So this is the war for water, foreign investors' firepower over Australian farmers in water deals. I have a couple things to say about this. So, the corporatization of Australian farming continues apace. Almost 14% of agricultural land is now owned by foreign investors who, according to a ruling by the ATO, Australian Tax Organization, do not have to pay a capital gains tax on water rights. A recent private ruling made by the Australian Tax Office has revealed foreign residents are exempt from capital gains tax on water profits. It's quite possible, therefore, that when Angus Taylor's Cayman Islands Associates won their record $80 million windfall from selling water rights, they incurred no capital gains tax. The tax office ruling confirms that what many farmers have known for years, that large, often foreign-owned agribusiness enjoys significant advantages over Australian farming families, not only because of their sheer size, but access to cheaper capital and also tax. Land and water, the big corporate buyout. The Australian farming is being increasingly corporatized. The Australian Tax Office reports foreign ownership of agricultural land as of June 2019 at almost 14% of all agricultural land is held by foreigners. The Register of Foreign Ownership of Water Entitlements shows that as of 2018, 10.4% or 4,035 gallons of Australia's water entitlements have some degree of foreign ownership. I'm not sure that number is quite correct, but of foreign investors in Australian water entitlements, China and the US are the biggest, sitting at roughly 2% each, followed by the UK investors at 1.1%. In 2019, there were around 89,000 agricultural businesses across Australia, down 34% from 2010. Helen Dalton, the member for Murray and advocate for transparency in New South Wales water market, called the ruling a form of treason. Our own government is giving foreign companies a huge advantage over Australian farmers. Quote, the Nationals have turned our water market into a casino. The fact that foreign corporations can make millions trading our water while our towns run out of water is a national disgrace. Dalton has had her transparency bill, which would create a register of all water entitlement owners in New South Wales, voted down by the coalition 4 times in 2021. Melinda Pavey, the New South Wales Water Minister, has previously voiced her support for international investment in Australia's water market. Water market inefficiency. Murray-Darling Basin expert Marianne Slattery, director of Slattery and Johnston, believes that the water market, quote, has been a disastrous experiment, not just for the environment, but for a whole lot of our industries and communities. Slattery finds arguments in favor of the water market a bit like, quote, first-year economics students claiming that the water goes to the highest value use, finish quote. A vast amount of water is being drawn away from various new foreign-owned tree nut farms downstream in... I'm not going to try and pronounce that. I don't want to butcher it. Farmers like Reese Glenn, a small irrigator who has worked his property at Mathwara since 1946, is one of the countless family businesses driven near bankruptcy. A result, he says, of reckless mismanagement of the Murray, which is a big river. The almond farmers downstream have deep pockets and they come first. All of us small operators are cast aside, finish quote, Mr. Glenn told the New Daily. Foreign-controlled farms like those of the largest foreign-controlled farms like those of the largest holders of Australian water, the Canadian super fund PSP Investments, can outcompete the productive and established rice and dairy industries. I actually have that open right here to talk about as well. PSP Investments has huge water interest, making up 2% of available water entitlements, after acquiring the Chris Corrigan-controlled Webster's investment for $2 billion. Note, with the recent confirmation from the tax office, it appears the Canadian Superfund tax advantages in Australia water not even afford longtime heroes of the Liberal Party such as Corrigan. I don't know what to make of that sentence. According to Terry Butler, the federal shadow minister for the environment and water, quote, the Morrison government would be aware of community concerns about speculators in the water markets, end quote. And then another quote, farmers in regional communities deserve an explanation, particularly given how poor the Morrison government has managed water and our most precious resource, finish quote, end quote. In addition to concerns about speculation, there is also a lack of trust within the basin more broadly. This has been made worse by the fact that the Morris government is asleep at the wheel when it comes to integrity issues with the Murray-Darling Basin. Finish quote. I believe that this has not gotten much better under the current Albanese government. The Liberal and Labour parties in Australia are pretty much the same as Democrats and Republicans. They're both owned by corporate interests. Maybe not as much, but definitely very strongly influenced. Just over half of all water entitlements on the issue of Australia are located in the Murray-Darling Basin. Of this, 9.4% or 1,800 gallons. Is capital GL gallons, or does that mean something else? Measurement. I really should know this. No, that does not mean that. What does that mean? Wikipedia, measurements, GL. No, not GIL. GL, capital, please. I hate when this happens. Oh, come on. This is annoying. Okay, let's just assume that capital GL is the metric version of 1,000 gallons. No, because the metrics don't use gallons, liters. I would think capital GL, because gallons is GAL, would be thousands. So 1,800,000 gallons. The Murray, I'm wrong about that. I will research this after the stream, and I will post a comment in the comment section correcting that. The Murray-Darling Basin Water Market Inquiry's interim report estimated that the basin's wide market's annual value is worth more than $1.5 billion per year, meaning basin-wide there's approximately $141 million in foreign-controlled water assets. Kate Washington, New South Wales Shadow Minister for the Environment, also recognized the need for increased oversight into the Murray-Darling Basin. Quote, we already know that the water trading scheme is flawed from top to bottom, but if thousands of gigaliters, that's what that is, gigaliters. If only I had just read a little further down, could have saved some time. Gigaliters. So that would be 1,800,000 liters of foreign-controlled water is being traded with unfair tax advantages that could skew the market even more to the detriment of local farmers and our environment." End quote. Quote, "The Nationalist Party and the Water Minister have encouraged private foreign ownership buying our water. Clearly they need to explain why foreigners are getting tax breaks that aren't available to Aussies. At a state and federal level, what are they going to do to make the system fairer?" End quote. Keith Pitt, the federal minister for Environment and Water, declined Michael West's media's invitation to comment. Why do foreign companies get a tax leg up? Explaining the ruling, an ATO spokesperson elaborated, quote, "Water entitlements are generally separate from the underlying land and not taxable Australian real property. This means that a foreign resident would disregard any capital gain from the sale of water entitlement, in contrast to Australian resident entities are required to account for gains or losses on their worldwide assets, which include assets like assets in Australia like water entitlements." End quote. According to Professor Michael Durkis of the Ross Parsons Center for Commercial, Corporate and Taxation Law at the University of Sydney, quote, "Prior to 2005, Australia had a comprehensive thing for foreign residents had to pay capital gains tax on. After 2005, the federal government reduced the subjects more consistent with OECD approach. If foreign resident has an interest in real property, then any capital gains associated is going to be caught. In the way that water is legally structured, it no longer counts as real property like buildings or land." Professor Durkis notes, quote, "One might assume that water which has run through an area of land might be considered part of the land by some," end quote. However, it is not under Australian taxation law. The Howard government finalized the decoupling of water from land in 2004, formalizing Australia's water market to attend to over-allocation of water entitlements that have been plaguing the Murray-Darling. Now, FriendlyJordies, who's an Australian YouTuber, has done an excellent video on this, and he has given me permission to use a small portion of it. So, I just want to make sure. There we go. So, floodplain harvesting. First off, I just want to talk. So, floodplain harvesting is the practice of drawing water away from a river when it rains and storing it for private sale. And how that functions and why that's legal is incredibly complicated, but we have a very nice section of this video to show you right here.
Floodplain harvesting is a method of water theft, full stop. Basically, farms divert water that would naturally flow into the basin into private dams. This water can be later used for irrigation, usually to irrigate profitable yet water-intensive crops like cotton. This means floodplain harvesters, in theory, can save all their legal entitlements, not using a drop for irrigation, instead treating those water licenses like stocks to speculate on.
Now, I wanted to say that, first of all, again, this is speculative investment of land, resources, things that should not be commodities. But on top of that, this has massive effects downstream. Now, if you look at this map right here, this is the northern basin, the southern basin. All of this is the Murray-Darling. Now, water flows downstream, obviously, but when it's collected and harvested, less water flows downstream, creating droughts and creating conditions where the local population have trouble farming, the local indigenous population have trouble accessing clean drinking water.
They can then use the unaccounted floodplain harvested or stolen water to irrigate their cotton, making water scarcer and their licenses, or as I like to call them, stocks, more valuable. Who'd have thought that the drought could be so profitable, eh? It turns out most of these floodplain harvesting cotton farms are located in the northern basin, which means, again, like Cubby,
Cubby Station is what I'm going to go over next. But before that, I also wanted to show this part of the video. Now, this is an interview with Claire Miller, who is the CEO of the New South Wales Irrigators Council. And this is Jim Cush, who is the elected chair of the New South Wales Irrigators Council. Now, I just wanted to show, again, this is something that I had asked permission for. Watch the reaction on Claire's face when Jim Cush's property is called.
Flying over his property, we realised why he was so averse to having anyone see him. According to Slattery, most of the water in storages in the Gwaundia, where Jim's property is located, had to have come from floodplain harvesting. There were full dams at the end of the season, but Gwaundia irrigators use less than half of their river and aquifer allocations. That is, the rest had to have come from floodplain harvesting. Here's Jim's cotton, green and storage is full. So,
now, as you saw there, that land is green. That land is properly, like, it's filled with water. Yet that's upstream. And that water is now stuck there, ready to be sold as a commodity, rather than being able to be used by, like I said, downstream farmers and the indigenous population that still inhabits much of Australia and lives like they used to, as clean drinking water access on top of irrigation access and use in farming. This water is being stolen to be sold overseas.
To end our interview with Claire, we
Now,
decided to ask
I just
her about her
wanted to
thoughts on Jim
show
Cush.
this.
We were flying over some of the properties in the north, and we went past like the CEO Jim Cush's. Oh, sorry, yeah, it was the chair. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Jim Cush's. I'm talking to the CEO.
Sorry, when did you fly over?
About a couple of months ago, maybe something like that. And yeah, they were just pointing it out, and it was just
the as if it's just disgusting.
so much water stored on the property.
And what are you suggesting that it was?
I don't know. It's just like it should. Like, here's a photo of it. Like, this can't be natural. Like, look at that. And if
Now just watch how squirrely she gets.
that's like, if the Department of Planning and Industry and Environment is just like, they're the ones that are saying you shouldn't be doing this.
I'm sorry, but
Should we just be
that water
abiding by that?
that water that's sitting in there is water that would have been accessed from general security allocations and supplementary, and there would be some, possibly from some of the localised floods and things, some flood water. NRA visits this property all the time, so
But hypothetically, if we could prove that
legally
it wasn't,
accessed.
but if we could prove that
There's
it
no
wasn't,
hypothetical about proving that it wasn't.
but if it wasn't, would you support that?
We support legally accessed water.
So if
That
it's
water is
illegally
legally
accessed water, you wouldn't approve of it.
Are you suggesting that water was illegally accessed?
Just absolute disgusting. Can't even give a straight answer because it would contradict the other things that she has said. It would not even that she has said, but she's the CEO of the New South Wales Irrigator Council. It would have massive implications on her work to answer that question truthfully. And therefore she won't answer the question truthfully. Now, before we get into this, I need to take a little bathroom break. I'll be back in a few seconds. Well, a minute or two.